The night I discovered the truth about what that man had done to Poppy, the blood in my veins froze. Her silence, the trembling of her hands, it wasn't adolescence. It wasn't mood swings or stubbornness. It was fear. Real fear. Fear that had been forced into her by the man she was told to call her stepfather. In that moment, I understood. This was no longer about custody papers, no longer about divorce settlements. This was a war. And I swore to myself I was not going to lose. My name is Hudson Collins. I'm 50 years old. I own a small bookstore on the corner of Maple Street, the kind of place where the shelves are dusty, where the air smells like old paper, and customers come not just to buy books, but to escape into other people's stories. But my own story, I thought it had ended long ago. Once, I had a wife, Oakley. And I had a daughter, Poppy. For a while we were a family, or at least I believed we were. But little by little the cracks grew, the laughter stopped, the silences got longer, until even the arguments disappeared. I still hear Oakley's voice from those nights. Hudson, you don't listen to me anymore. And my own answer, bitter, tired. And you don't hear me either. She would look away, I would shut down, and the house, our home, became just 4 walls filled with distance. We both knew where it was heading. The day in court still burns in my memory. The judge's question was simple. Who will have primary custody of the child? I looked at Poppy, 16, frightened, clinging to her mother's sleeve, and I told myself, she needs her mom more than me. She needs Oakley. So I spoke the words that still haunt me. I'll let Oakley have custody. Oakley turned, surprised, maybe even relieved. The judge nodded, and the gavel fell. Just like that. I walked away from the one thing that mattered most. I told myself it was the right thing, that I was protecting her, not abandoning her, that it was sacrifice, not surrender. But when I close my eyes at night, I hear another voice, my own, whispering in the dark. You let her go, Hudson. You let her go. I thought I had done what was best, but what followed proved how wrong I was. And that choice, the choice to step aside, became the decision that has haunted every breath I've taken since. A marriage doesn't always end with shouting. Sometimes it ends with silence. That's how it was with Oakley and me. Not fire, not betrayal, just a slow fading. I remember nights at the dinner table. She sat across from me, scrolling through her phone. I stirred my coffee. We barely spoke. I looked at her and thought, when did we stop talking? When did we stop caring? One evening, she set her fork down and whispered, Hudson, we can't keep living like this. I stared at her. My throat burned, but all I said was, I know. No fight, no tears, just 2 people admitting the obvious. Our home grew colder after that. I slept in the spare room. She stayed up late in the living room. The laughter was gone. The intimacy was gone. All that remained was distance. Poppy was 16 then. She tried to pretend she didn't notice. She would ask, Dad, are you and Mom okay? And I'd force a smile. Of course, sweetheart. Don't worry about us. But she knew. Children always know. The day of the divorce hearing came. We sat at the long wooden table, Oakley on one side, me on the other. Poppy sat in the middle, her body leaning into her mother, her small hand clutching Oakley's sleeve like a lifeline. The judge asked the question that split my soul in 2. Who will have custody of the child? Silence filled the room. I wanted to stand, to shout, she needs me, she's my daughter. But when I looked at her, so small, pressed against her mother, I felt something inside me break. Oakley turned to me, waiting. The judge waited. Poppy waited. And I heard my own voice betray me. Oakley should have custody. A daughter belongs with her mother. The words echoed in the room. Final. Irrevocable. Oakley's eyes widened, then softened. The judge wrote it down. And the gavel struck. Just like that, my marriage ended. But worse, my home ended. When we left the courthouse, Oakley walked ahead with Poppy. I trailed behind, every step heavier than the last. Poppy glanced back, her eyes uncertain. I forced a smile. a weak, broken smile. That night, alone in my house, I poured myself a drink. The silence was unbearable. No footsteps upstairs, no soft humming from Oakley, no laughter from Poppy, just emptiness. I whispered to myself, "Why did you do it, Hudson? Why did you let her go?" I told myself it was for Poppy's good, that she needed her mother more than me, that I was being noble. But the truth, I was afraid. Afraid I wasn't strong enough to raise her alone. Afraid she'd see me for what I was, an ordinary man with a failing marriage hiding in a dusty bookshop. Fear dressed itself up as sacrifice, and everyone believed it. Oakley thought I was noble. The judge thought I was reasonable. Even I wanted to believe it. But in the quiet of that empty house, with whiskey in my hand and silence pressing down, I knew the truth. I hadn't sacrificed. I had surrendered. And that choice, that single choice, would come back to haunt me in ways I never imagined. Oakley remarried a year after the divorce. His name was Elias Stewart, a man who seemed perfect, charming, confident, polite in all the right ways. Everyone said he was the kind of man Oakley deserved. Everyone, except me. The first time I met him was at a cafe near Poppy's school. Oakley had said, "You should meet him, Hudson. He'll be part of Poppy's life now." When I walked in, they were already there. Oakley looked radiant, lighter than I'd seen her in years, and beside her sat Elias, neat suit, gold watch, a smile too smooth to be honest. He stood up, extended his hand. "Hudson, it's good to finally meet you." I shook it, cold, firm, a practiced grip. His eyes, though, sharp, watchful, like he was measuring me. I said, "Likewise," and sat down. He talked a lot about his business, his plans, how he wanted to guide Poppy toward her future. Oakley laughed at everything he said. I watched her face, that happiness I once gave her now belonging to someone else. I tried to be glad for her. I really did. Then Poppy arrived. She hesitated before taking the seat beside Oakley. Elias leaned toward her, smiling. "You've grown so much, Poppy." His hand brushed her shoulder, casual, almost fatherly. But she flinched. It was small, quick, yet I saw it. Oakley noticed too, but she laughed softly. "She's shy, Elias. Don't take it personally." He chuckled. "Of course not. Teenagers take time to warm up." His tone was warm, but his eyes weren't. I clenched my jaw and stayed quiet. Still, something cold and uneasy began to settle inside me. Weeks passed. Oakley called sometimes, her voice light and proud. "Hudson, Elias is wonderful. He helps Poppy with homework, makes dinner. She's lucky to have him." I forced a smile she couldn't see. "That's good, Oakley. I'm glad." But when I visited, the air in that house felt wrong. Too polished, too perfect. Elias opened the door with that same gleaming grin. "Hudson, always good to see you." His hand landed on my shoulder, heavy, deliberate. Poppy sat quietly on the couch, her eyes lowered. "How's school?" I asked. "Fine," she whispered. Elias stepped in. "She's doing great, aren't you, kiddo?" His voice made her shrink into herself. I looked at Oakley, but she didn't see it, or didn't want to. One afternoon, I dropped by unannounced. Elias seemed surprised. "You should have called first," he said, too quickly. "Poppy's studying." From the hallway, I glimpsed her, sitting at her desk, shoulders tense, eyes wide when she saw me. Elias's voice followed me, smooth as ever. "She's fine, Hudson. You worry too much." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every gesture, every look replayed in my mind. His hand on her shoulder, her silence, her fear. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was just a jealous ex-husband. That's what I told myself. But fathers know. We always know. I asked Oakley a few days later, "Does Poppy seem different to you?" She frowned. "She's a teenager, Hudson. That's what they do. Pull away." "She's scared," I said quietly. "You can see it if you look." Oakley sighed, shaking her head. "Elias has been nothing but kind. Please, don't start this again." But I saw what she didn't. Or maybe she just refused to. There's a kind of fear in a child's eyes you never forget, a fear that doesn't come from rules or discipline, but from something darker. When I locked the bookstore that night, I caught my reflection in the glass door, tired eyes, hands trembling. I whispered to myself, "Something's wrong in that house." and for the first time since the divorce, I was truly afraid. It started with small things, things only a father would notice. Poppy used to laugh all the time. She'd send me pictures of the books she was reading, little notes from school, silly things about her friends. But lately, nothing. When I called, she answered with one-word replies. When I asked to see her, she always had an excuse. Maybe next week, Dad. I've got homework. Or, Elias said we're visiting Mom's friends tonight. Her voice sounded careful, like she was reading from a script. One Saturday, I showed up at her school after class. She looked startled when she saw me, like I wasn't supposed to. I asked, "How about some ice cream, like we used to?" She hesitated. "I can't. Elias is picking me up." Her tone was polite, almost mechanical. I smiled, pretending not to notice. "Another time, then." She nodded, but her eyes didn't meet mine. That night, something in me wouldn't rest. I stared at the phone, wanting to call, wanting to ask more. But what could I say? "Are you afraid, sweetheart?" No, she'd never answer that. A week later, when I finally got to see her, she wore a long-sleeved sweater. It was warm outside, too warm. She hugged me quickly, avoiding my eyes. But when I touched her arm, she flinched. I pulled her sleeve up slightly. There were faint bruises along her forearm, uneven, as if someone had grabbed her too tightly. "Poppy, what happened?" I asked. She pulled her arm away. "I fell, on the stairs." Her voice was small, too small. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "It's nothing, Dad. I'm clumsy." She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I didn't press her. Not then. I didn't want to scare her. But the image burned into me. Those bruises weren't from a fall. I'd seen that kind of mark before. The imprint of fingers. That night, I sat in the bookstore long after closing. The lights were off. The shelves stood like silent witnesses. I poured myself a cup of coffee I didn't drink. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was seeing ghosts where there were none. But a father's instinct, it doesn't lie. I tried to read, to lose myself in the words, but every line blurred. Every sound outside made me jump. When the phone finally rang, I nearly dropped it, but it wasn't her. Just a telemarketer. I hung up and stared at the screen, wishing it would light up with her name. I called Oakley the next day. "How's Poppy doing?" She sounded cheerful. "She's fine, Hudson. Better than fine." "Why?" "I saw her last week. She seemed distant." Oakley laughed softly. "She's 16. That's what teenagers do. You're reading too much into it." I wanted to tell her about the bruises, about the way Poppy's hands trembled when she said, "Elias," but something stopped me. Maybe fear, maybe doubt, maybe the stupid hope that I was wrong. A few days later, Poppy sent a text. "Sorry, Dad. Can't visit this weekend." That was it. No reason, no emoji, just words that felt like a door quietly closing. I sat there staring at the message, whispering to myself, "What's happening to you, Poppy?" That night, I dreamed of her as a child, laughing in the shop, sitting on the counter as I read to her from old storybooks. I woke up sweating. The silence of my house pressed down like a weight. Something was wrong. I could feel it deep in my bones. Her laughter was gone. Her eyes no longer sparkled, and the distance between us, once measured in miles, now felt like a wall I couldn't break through. For the first time since the divorce, I was truly afraid of what I didn't know. I told myself, "You're imagining things, Hudson. Don't overthink." But another voice, the one that never lies, whispered back, "No, you're not. You're seeing the truth. You just don't want to face it yet." And that night, I didn't sleep at all. It was a quiet Thursday night when the phone rang. Poppy's name appeared on the screen. For a second, I just stared at it. She hadn't called me in weeks. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, trying to sound calm. Her voice was trembling. "Dad, can I come over?" When she arrived, her eyes were swollen, her hands shaking. She didn't say a word, just walked into my arms and broke down. I held her, confused and terrified. "Poppy, what happened?" She cried harder, her voice cracking. "Dad, he yells at me. When Mom's not around, He grabs my arm so tight it hurts. He says I'm stupid, that I don't deserve to be Mom's daughter. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I pulled back, looking at her face. Who, Poppy? She hesitated, then whispered, Elias. The room went still. Even the air seemed to stop moving. I forced my voice to stay steady. What else has he done? Her eyes filled with tears again. Once, I was studying in my room. He just walked in. No knocking. He stood behind me, put his hand on my shoulder, said he only wanted to see what I was working on. But his hand stayed there. He leaned closer. Too close. I tried to move away, but he laughed and said, Don't be so sensitive, Poppy. I was just kidding. My chest tightened. My heart pounded like it wanted out. I stared at her, trying to find words, but none came. I whispered, Did you tell your mother? She shook her head. She doesn't believe me. She says I'm exaggerating, that I just don't like him because he's strict. Her voice trembled. But Dad, I'm scared. I don't want to go back there. I felt something break inside me, loud, final, not anger yet, just pain so deep it burned. I took her hands. Listen to me, Poppy, you did nothing wrong. Do you understand? None of this is your fault. She nodded, crying silently. He said if I tell anyone, Mom will hate me. He said she'll send me away. That was the moment fury hit me like fire. I stood up, pacing, my fists clenched. He said that? She flinched. Dad, please, don't make it worse. I turned back to her. My voice shook. Worse. He's already made it worse. You're living in fear under your own roof. She looked at me with those same eyes she had as a little girl, full of fear and trust at once. What will you do? I knelt down beside her. I'll protect you, I swear it. He'll never hurt you again. Promise? She whispered. Promise, I said. And I meant it with every breath left in me. Later that night she fell asleep on the couch, her head resting against my arm. I sat beside her for hours, watching her breathe, realizing how fragile she looked, how small. The child I used to read bedtime stories to was now hiding from a monster inside her own home. I thought of Oakley, of how blind she'd been, of how I'd once trusted her judgment more than my own. But now, that trust was gone. I looked at my daughter and made myself a vow. No more silence, no more pretending. Whatever it took, proof, witnesses, the law, I would bring the truth into the light. That night, I stopped being the man who stepped aside. I became the man who would fight. Because if Elias Stewart had dared to touch my child, then he had already declared war. And this time, I was ready. I went to their house the next morning. I didn't call. I didn't warn anyone. The anger in me had burned all night until it became something steady, cold and clear. Oakley opened the door, surprise flickering across her face. Hudson? What are you doing here? We need to talk, I said. My voice came out low, almost calm. She hesitated. Then Elias appeared behind her, all charm and composure. Hudson, always a pleasure. I stepped inside. Where's Poppy? Oakley frowned. She's at school. Why? I looked at both of them, my chest tight. Because she told me what's been happening. Elias's smile didn't falter, but his eyes sharpened. And what exactly did she tell you? That you yell at her, grab her, that you make her feel unsafe in her own home. Oakley gasped, turning toward me. What are you talking about? But that's absurd. Is it? I said quietly. You haven't noticed how she flinches when he walks in the room? How she avoids looking at him? Elias raised a hand, still pretending patience. Hudson, you're making something out of nothing. Teenagers can be dramatic. You know that. I took a step closer. She said you put your hands on her, that you went into her room. Oakley's voice trembled. No, she wouldn't say that. She did, I said, and I believe her. Oakley's expression hardened. Of course you do. You've always needed someone to blame. You can't stand that Elias treats her better than you ever did. I stared at her, speechless. Better? You call this better? She's terrified, Oakley. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, pulling her close, a perfect performance of a loving husband. Darling, don't let him upset you. He's twisting things. You know how emotional he can be. Then he looked at me, his tone sharper. Hudson, Your imagination is poisoning your daughter. You're turning her against us. Against you, I snapped. Not us. Don't you dare use us. For a brief moment, the mask slipped. His eyes went dark, cold. Then he smiled again. You really should be careful what you accuse people of. It could backfire. Oakley looked between us, her face pale. Stop it, both of you, you're scaring me. I turned to her. You should be scared, Oakley, because if you keep ignoring what's happening under your roof, you'll lose her. Not to me, to him. Elias's jaw tightened. You're unstable, Hudson. Maybe that's why she left you in the first place. The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I just stared at him. You think you can talk your way out of this? You think your charm hides what you are? I see you, and soon everyone else will too. Oakley shouted, Enough! I won't let you come into my house and accuse my husband of such things. I turned toward the door, but before leaving I looked back. One day, Oakley, you'll wish you'd listened. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Elias spoke, his voice low, almost taunting. You'll destroy yourself, Hudson. You always do. I walked out before I could hit him. The door slammed behind me, but his words echoed like venom. On the drive home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. My chest felt heavy, not just with rage, but fear. Poppy was still in that house, still under his roof. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't think. I sat in the dark watching the clock tick, over and over. Every second felt like a warning. If I waited, if I doubted myself, I'd lose her, maybe forever. I whispered to the empty room, Hold on, Poppy, I'm coming for you. And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. The time for conversation was over. Now it was war. I went to their house the next morning. I didn't call. I didn't warn anyone. The anger in me had burned all night until it became something steady, cold and clear. Oakley opened the door, surprise flickering across her face. Hudson, what are you doing here? We need to talk, I said. My voice came out low, almost calm. She hesitated. Then Elias appeared behind her, all charm and composure. Hudson, always a pleasure. I stepped inside. Where's Poppy? Oakley frowned. She's at school. Why? I looked at both of them, my chest tight. Because she told me what's been happening. Elias's smile didn't falter, but his eyes sharpened. And what exactly did she tell you? That you yell at her, grab her, that you make her feel unsafe in her own home. Oakley gasped, turning toward me. What are you talking about? That's absurd. Is it? I said quietly. You haven't noticed how she flinches when he walks in the room? How she avoids looking at him? Elias raised a hand, still pretending patience. Hudson, you're making something out of nothing. Teenagers can be dramatic. You know that. I took a step closer. She said you put your hands on her, that you went into her room. Oakley's voice trembled. No, she wouldn't say that. She did, I said, and I believe her. Oakley's expression hardened. Of course you do. You've always needed someone to blame. You can't stand that Elias treats her better than you ever did. I stared at her, speechless. Better? You call this better? She's terrified, Oakley. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, pulling her close, a perfect performance of a loving husband. Darling, don't let him upset you. He's twisting things. You know how emotional he can be. Then he looked at me, his tone sharper. Hudson, your imagination is poisoning your daughter. You're turning her against us. Against you, I snapped, not us. Don't you dare use us. For a brief moment, the mask slipped. His eyes went dark, cold. Then he smiled again. You really should be careful what you accuse people of. It could backfire. Oakley looked between us, her face pale. Stop it, both of you. You're scaring me. I turned to her. You should be scared, Oakley. Because if you keep ignoring what's happening under your roof, you'll lose her. Not to me, to him. Elias's jaw tightened. You're unstable, Hudson. Maybe that's why she left you in the first place. The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I just stared at him. You think you can talk your way out of this? You think your charm hides what you are? I see you, and soon everyone else will too. Oakley shouted, Enough! I won't let you come into my house and accuse my husband of such things. I turned toward the door, but before leaving I looked back. "One day, Oakley, you'll wish you'd listened." For a moment, the room was silent. Then Elias spoke, his voice low, almost taunting. "You'll destroy yourself, Hudson. You always do." I walked out before I could hit him. The door slammed behind me, but his words echoed like venom. On the drive home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. My chest felt heavy, not just with rage, but fear. Poppy was still in that house, still under his roof. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't think. I sat in the dark watching the clock tick over and over. Every second felt like a warning. If I waited, if I doubted myself, I'd lose her, maybe forever. "Hun," I whispered to the empty room. "Hold on, Poppy, I'm coming for you." And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. The time for conversation was over. Now, it was war. The court's decision came down like the first breath after drowning. Poppy was granted to live with me. For a second, I didn't move. I just sat there, letting the words reach the part of me that hadn't dared to hope. Across the room, Oakley folded in on herself. She covered her face with both hands, whispering something I couldn't hear. Maybe a prayer. Maybe regret. Her tears weren't loud. They fell like the sound of a truth finally landing. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. I'd been blind once, too. Elias sat still as stone, jaw clenched, his mask finally cracked. When the guards moved toward him, he turned his head away from me. I looked at him one last time and said quietly, "You'll never touch her again." Then everything else blurred. The gavel, the murmurs, the papers shuffling. All I saw was my daughter, standing there shaking, her eyes searching for something solid. I opened my arms. She ran to me and buried her face in my chest. Her body trembled against mine, just like the night she told me the truth. "It's over," I whispered. She looked up, her voice small. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "No one will ever hurt you again, not while I'm here." Oakley took a step toward us. "Hudson," she said, voice breaking. I didn't see it. I didn't want to. I met her eyes. I know. There was nothing else to say. Some mistakes can't be undone, only understood. When we left the courtroom, the sky outside looked the same as it always had, but everything inside me had changed. Poppy held my hand the way she did when she was little, tightly without thinking. That simple grip told me more than any verdict ever could. We drove home in silence, not the cold silence that used to live between Oakley and me, but something softer, cautious, almost peaceful. She stared out the window, the sunlight brushing across her face. For the first time in months, her shoulders weren't drawn tight. At home, I made tea for us both. She sat at the counter, tracing circles on the mug, and said quietly, "Dad, what happens now?" I smiled, tired but sure. "Now we start again." She nodded. "With just us?" "With just us," I said. That night I stood by her bedroom door, watching her fall asleep. No nightmares, no tension in her breathing. Just calm. I waited there longer than I needed to, afraid to blink, afraid she might vanish if I did. I whispered into the dark, "No one will ever hurt you again. Not while I'm alive." She stirred, half asleep, and murmured, "Good night, Dad." And for the first time in years, the word Dad didn't echo in an empty room. It filled it. As I turned off the light, a thought came like a whisper, steady, certain. Marriage can break, people can fail, but a father's duty never does. Love isn't just tenderness, it's protection. And I will protect her until the very end.